Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Wendy Ivy Martinez. I am a geek, and today we're going to be doing a wrap-up of both my October and November reads. So let's go ahead and get started. Usual, I'm going to be starting off from the very bottom, my lowest stars of the month, to my highest rated reads of the month. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump into the 2 stars that I read. Yes, because we did have a 2-star in the month of October. So let's get started with that. I am so sad. I thought that I could get into the genre of dark romance, and I could not. I couldn't. And so Haunting Adeline was unfortunately a 2-star read for me. So in case you guys do not know, Haunting Adeline is a stalker dark romance about a girl named Adeline. She is an author, very homey, very much like a homebody, has no personality pretty much, and then she starts to have a stalker who little by little becomes more and more creepy as it goes, and then he kind of like forces her to fall in love with him. It starts off non-consensual, and I just couldn't get into that. You know, dark romance is one thing, I guess, but when it's like non-consensual and you're like forcing someone to do these acts, I couldn't get into it. It wasn't my cup of tea, I guess you could say. So if that's your thing, no judgment, but me personally, I just could not get into it. That Adeline herself, our main character, when I don't like the main characters, it's hard to enjoy the story, and Adeline fell very flat for me. She was such a boring character. She had like no personality whatsoever. Zaid, I didn't like him either, unfortunately. He was such a hypocrite because he basically he saves all these like women and children from these messed up situations, but he's turning around and doing these horrible things to Adeline. So, and he doesn't really mention that. I would have liked at least an inner struggle within himself, knowing that he's doing the things that he's against, but there was no inner struggle. He mentions it, and then it's like he just sort of brushes it off, and I didn't like that. So that is my 2-star read for October. And now let's move on to my 3-star reads.
Oh yeah, sounds good!
So for my 3-star reads, I guess I'm going to mention them as a whole, but I read Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, More Scary Stories, and Scary Stories 3. I don't want to say that these are like a 4-star, even though I think I did put a 4-star on Goodreads, but these are just like children's horror books. They're very short stories that really creeped me out as a kid, and I wanted to go back and read them as an adult to see if they were just as enjoyable, and they definitely are a very fun time. It was nice taking a trip down memory lane and getting that little nostalgia vibe, especially with the original illustrations that I was used to as a kid that were just so freaking creepy. That's what like made the book so scary. And after that, I ended up watching the movie, and I loved how the illustrations were very like true to the characters in the movie were really true to like the illustrations that are in the book, and it was so good. Like, it was such a fun time. I wouldn't necessarily say it's like a big 4-star 5-star read for me, but it was just nice, a nice little cozy nostalgic feel, especially during the month of October. Another 3-star read that I read is Kingdom of the Wicked by Kerri Maniscalco. Now, in this story, we follow 2 twins, and they are witches, and basically growing up, their grandmother would protect them and teach them about these demons from hell and tell them how these demons are so bad, and she would perform all these like prayers and stuff to keep those demons away. Now the girls are older, and one of the twin sisters, what's her name? Vittoria ends up getting killed, and Emilia, the other twin, goes on this epic adventure to try and find who killed Vittoria, and she accidentally binds herself to this prince of hell, Wrath, and it's their little adventure together, and that her sort of learning more about this dark side, about her inner darkness, about these princes of hell, and her part and her sister's part in this whole story that's going on. This was, again, a really enjoyable read. I rated it 3 out of 5 stars just because, again, for some reason, YA doesn't hit me like it used to. It just feels... I don't know, I think I outgrew it. I used to love YA so much, but I feel like since I'm older, I don't enjoy it as much, and this is just like a personal preference for me. But the storyline itself was really good, and I really do want to finish this trilogy. That way I can actually read the adult book that Kerri Maniscalco came out with called Throne of the Fallen. So I'm very excited to read that one. So I'm going to continue this series for sure, so that I can get to Throne of the Fallen. Now I'm going to have my 3.5 star, and that is Wildfire by Hannah Grace. This is Maple Hills #2. The first one I think is like that icebreaker. Yeah, it's like that icebreaker hockey romance. I had no interest in reading that one whatsoever, but Wildfire did look very fun to me, so I picked it up via audio, and it was good. Okay, it was a good time. This basically follows this girl who is very like rich and has a very famous father who owns like some sort of Formula One team, I believe, but her father is very distant, and because her father is very distant, she has daddy issues and she cannot be in a relationship. Basically, she feels like she's a burden and she feels like nobody can really truly love her, so she has a whole bunch of one-night stands, and she swears that she's okay with this. And then comes along this one guy, I forgot what his name is, I think his name is Ross. Yeah, his name's Ross. So Ross comes along and they have that one-night stand, and then he goes to the bathroom after this one-night stand, and our main character takes it as like her cue to go, when in reality Ross was just trying to pump himself up in order to ask her out on a proper date, because this is also new for him as well. And Aurora thinks that it's just him being like, okay, he obviously wants me to leave. So she ends up leaving, and then Ross comes out and he's like, what the heck happened? And then our main character is like, oh, he just wanted me to go. And then they don't talk after that until they come face to face with each other at this camp, where they are camp counselors for these kids. And it's cute. This was a very light-hearted, fun read. Even though it was October, it was nice to read about camps and stuff, because I remember going to summer camp as a kid and seeing the camp counselors obviously have their own little problems and have their romances, and it was so fun as a kid to see them have their little drama. So to be able to read like their perspective and their point of view, it was really fun. It was a much needed read after the darkness that I read in October, especially after this one particular book that I will get to later.
Yay!
Alright, so the first 4-star read that I want to talk about for October is Tomie by Junji Ito. This basically follows this beautiful, bewitching girl named Tomie, and she is stunning, okay, because she is a succubus, and she is able to basically make any guy fall in love with her and completely bewitch them and make them do whatever she wants. And she is this horrible person, and these men end up falling in love with her so much that they do not want any other man to have her, so they chop her up into little tiny pieces. But Tomie, being not human and something much more than that, every little piece of her that gets taken apart becomes a brand new Tomie, and now you just have hundreds of thousands of Tomies just running around doing crazy, mischievous, horrible things to people and ruining their lives, because that's what Tomie likes to do. This book was really good. I love Junji Ito. I have read a lot of his manga collections, and Tomie is one of his most famous books / manga. novels, and I really am happy to have finally read it. It was really good. Getting to read this character and not be inside her head, but pretty much be inside her head, because we're following her throughout the whole story, is just really, she was a very irritating character, and you just love to hate her. And I love how Junji Ito made this character that we really, really despise, yet cannot get enough of. So I really did enjoy this story a lot, and I recommend it to anybody that reads horror and that wants to try manga or, you know, graphic novels. I feel like this is a really good place to start if you're a fan of horror. The next 4-star read that I read in October, I'm not going to go too into detail about it because I have a full vlog about this, but that is Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. Now, this book has often been compared to Fourth Wing, not in the sense that it's about dragons, but in a sense that it's fast-paced. It has that fantasy romance element. It has the underdog character. It has the love interest that is pretty much the main character's mortal enemy, and a powerful parental figure. And then you have these challenges that these people face, that they're often being killed each and every single day, just like in Fourth Wing. So it is very similar in all those things. However, I loved this book. I really did. It was very fast-paced. It had me hooked. I loved the characters. I loved our main character. I loved the love interest. I loved the side characters. However, I was so mad at the ending. I was so upset, and I don't want to talk about what happened at the ending, but I was so disappointed, and it made me almost not want to read the second one. However, my friend told me, just read the second one because it gets so much better, and I was just so mad at the end. Alright, so now let's move on to my 5-star reads. The first 5-star read that I have for October is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This book was so much fun to read. I really loved it. I listened to it on audio because I heard that it's so much better to listen to it on audio versus reading it physically, because you can get a little bit lost. And it was definitely a very fun experience. In this story, we follow our main character, whose name is Ryland Grace, and he is basically wakes up on this spaceship, and he has no idea what he's doing there. He has no idea who he is, and the rest of his crewmates are dead. And then we start to realize, he starts to get little bits and pieces of his memory back, and he starts to realize, oh, I'm on a spaceship because I need to save Earth. And there are these little microbes, these little aliens that are eating up the sun, and he basically needs to find a way to save his planet before it's too late and pretty much everyone on Earth dies because the sun is dying. And it was just a really good book. It's very scientific, and the way that Andy Weir explains things, it's very very much scientifically thought out and written, but it was very enjoyable. Okay, even if you are not a big science fan or astronomy fan, I feel like you still will enjoy this, because Andy Weir has a good way of making science education very fun and very interesting to read. So when I was hearing about the velocity of the Earth and this and that, I wasn't like, oh gosh, this is so boring. I was like, oh yeah, tell me more. It was very interesting in that sense, and I loved it. It made me want to read more by Andy Weir, so I definitely want to read The Martian as well, because I really did enjoy this story a lot. It was beautiful. It was heartfelt. It had me crying at the very end. It was just so unexpected. It was just such an unexpected turn that I wasn't expecting. It was beautiful. It was just a very bittersweet story that I feel like anybody could really enjoy, even if you're not a fan of sci-fi. I feel like this is a very good sci-fi starter to see if you like the genre, and even if you don't like the genre, because I'm not even a big sci-fi person, you would still enjoy this book because there's something in here for everyone, I feel like. The next 5-star book that I want to talk about is the darkest book in October that I read, probably the darkest book that I've ever read in my whole life, and that is Tender as the Flesh by Agustina Bazterrica. In this story, we basically follow a man that works at a meat factory. And this meat factory, it's just not any ordinary meat. No. It is human meat, because in this world, there's this virus that all the animals end up getting that is very fatal to humans. So even if your dog licks you, you can get this virus and die. So there is a mass slaughtering of every single animal. And yes, that includes pets as well, which is really, really sad. And there's no more animals on Earth, basically, other than a few birds in the sky that they can't capture. And because there is a protein deficiency now, because we have no more livestock, the government makes it legal to basically raise these humans as cattle and make them into human meat, which they call heads and special meat. And this man works at this factory, and he basically becomes very numb, just like the rest of society, to the fact that these are humans. And it's very brutal and dark and so messed up. And the ending was this messed up twist that I wasn't expecting. I was just like, I mean, I kind of knew that it was going there, but I was hoping that it wouldn't, but it did. And I was so like left shocked, like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this happened. It was very dark. It was definitely animal cruelty. Please, like, if you cannot handle animal cruelty, which I'm surprised I had the stomach for it, because I'm very sensitive to animal cruelty, especially dogs. Like, dogs are my favorite animal. I love my dog so much too. So to see these horrible things happening to these animals, and it's described in such detail, it really messed me up. I was in this really dark place because of this book, because of how messed up this book is, and how grotesque and how truly horrific this would be. And I was getting nightmares every single night, but because of all that, the fact that a very short book had that effect on me, I had no choice but to make it 5 stars, because it impacted me tremendously, and it was giving me nightmares every single night. And it really made me think about how humans would handle it if this were to happen, because this does have a chance of happening to us. I mean, we just got hit with that epic virus that overtook the whole world, so who's not to say that something this horrendous cannot happen. It was really good, and it was definitely a must read, but please be warned, check trigger warnings, because this book is dark to a T. The last 5-star book that I want to talk about for October is, I'll put it somewhere here, Satan's Affair by H.D. Carlton. This is a prequel to Haunting Adeline. I'm shocked. I read this before Haunting Adeline to prepare for Haunting Adeline, and when I read this, I was so excited to start Haunting Adeline, because I'm like, okay, if it's anything like this is going to be amazing. And in this story, we follow this girl named Sibby who doesn't work. She goes around with this fair that has a haunted house, and she basically lives inside of it with her henchmen. She has a really messed up childhood, and she swears that she can sense demons and evil. So when she senses them within the haunted house, she basically marks them by whistling this tune, and then her henchmen go after these horrible demons and fetch them for her, and she slaughters them basically. And that turns her on, and it's a very like dark romance, very like multiple men with this woman. It was just so good and messed up, and very, even though it was only like 100 and something pages, it was very high, like really fast paced. I really enjoyed it so much. Like, I couldn't get enough of it. I read it in a matter of like a day or two because it was so good. I loved it. I loved Sibby, our main character. I loved the romance with the multiple men. I think this is, I'm not used to that. I think I've only read one other book, and it was like the Never King or something like that, but I feel like it didn't do as good of a job as this one. I don't know. It was so good. I loved it so much. I loved the smut scenes. I loved them so much. The smut, the spiciness. It was perfect. This book was perfection. And then the plot twist at the very end, that cliffhanger. I heard H.D. Carlton said that Sibby is going to get her own series and it's going to continue Satan's Affair, so I cannot wait to continue Sibby's story. So anyways, that is it for my October reads. Now let's go ahead and move on to my November reads. I'm glad I made this video together because I didn't read too many books in November actually. I ended up only reading 6 books in November. Yes, I know it's not that much, but let's go ahead and get started with my lowest rating to my highest rating for November. Sounds good. So the first book that I want to talk about is Dear Lena by Elena Rivers. This is going to be my 3-star read. My friend who wrote this book, this is her own self-published novel, and it is basically about a girl named Lena in high school who ends up being stalked, and you do not know who this stalker is till like the very end, so it's supposed to keep you on your toes. However, I just felt like this book was a little bit too rushed, and I felt like it could have been a little bit more like thoroughly written. It's one day and then literally a paragraph later it's like the next day. Also, the main character Lena, I just felt like everybody was in love with this main character, and it felt like, I don't know, it just didn't feel realistic to me, you know, that everybody liked this character that we didn't really get to know, you know, we didn't really get to know her too much just because everything was so rushed. We didn't really get to know any of these characters other than the fact that they were obsessed with her, and I just felt like it could have been if she took a little bit more time to write out each scene and it wasn't all just so rushed, and we got to know the characters more and there was growth within these characters, I feel like it would have been a lot more enjoyable. But for it being my friend's first novel, it was still a good read in the sense that I was very interested and I kept on guessing who the killer was. So, I mean, who the killer was, who the stalker was, and in that sense, I really did enjoy it. So that's why I ended up rating it 3 stars. Yay! Next, let's get to my 4-star reads. The first 4-star read that I want to talk about is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong, but this book is so cute and cozy and just so perfect. And after reading Tender is the Flesh, I have been in no mood to read horror just because it messed me up that much that I don't want to read anything dark at all. So this was a nice little comfort book in contrast to all the darkness that is in Tender is the Flesh. In this book, we follow a cafe, and in this cafe, you can basically travel through time, and we follow these different people that go back in time. We follow a girl who wants to basically fix her relationship, but she finds out that no matter how many times you go back, you can only go back in time once. So she finds out that even though you go back in time, you cannot change the present. And then in the second one, we follow I believe it's a husband and a wife. So we follow a wife who basically loves her husband very much, but he has dementia and he has now forgotten her. So she goes back to see him one last time when he still remembered who she was. And then we follow these 2 sisters, and one sister ends up getting in a very bad accident and ends up dying, and her sister goes back to see her one last time. And then lastly, we follow a woman who is pregnant who wants to meet her child even though she knows that she's not going to survive childbirth, so she actually travels forward in time to visit and see her child just one time, just to actually just meet her child before she doesn't get the actual chance to. So it was very beautiful, it was very heartwarming, and it was just a overall very cozy read. and I feel like anybody could benefit from it, because it just goes to show you that even if you cannot change past, doesn't mean that you cannot learn from it. So it was just really beautiful. Honestly, I really enjoyed this a lot. Next, I have another 4-star read, and if you guys want to see my whole video on this, I have a full-on vlog and spoiler talk, and that is Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. I literally marked the crap out of this with all my little notes and thoughts and theories and all that jazz. This book is a sequel to Fourth Wing, which I will talk about, so I can't really say too much about what this book is about because it's a sequel, but it was really good. It was enjoyable. However, I was very disappointed again with the ending. Like in Serpent and the Wings of Night, I was disappointed with that ending. I was disappointed with this ending as well. But if you want to see my whole thoughts on this, because I do go very much into detail about how I felt about this book, you guys can watch my vlog on this. Alright, so moving on to my 5-star reads. The first 5-star read is, no surprise, Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Of course, I had to go back and reread this before reading Iron Flame, and the second time around, it was just as enjoyable as the first. In fact, I was able to see things that I didn't see the first go around because, you know, you don't know what to expect the first time. So actually being able to reread it, knowing what happens, and then just seeing little things that you didn't catch the first time was so enjoyable to me. If you guys do not know, I have a vlog for this too, but in this book we follow our main character. Her name is Wilde, and she's pretty much an underdog. She suffers from a disability where her bones are more fragile and more brittle than regular people, and she grows up wanting to be a scribe, and basically has always been trained ever since she was a little kid to be a scribe and actually record history. And you can see I'm decked out in my Fourth Wing attire as well, with my Biscaya War college sweater. It says Dragon Rider down here, and in the back it has Andarna and Taryn. Anyways, but so we follow this character, and so she grows up raised to be a scribe. However, after her father passes and the day comes where she has to go into the scribe wing, her mother is like, no, you are not going to be a scribe, you are going to be a dragon rider. No daughter of mine is going to be a scribe. No. And she is basically has no choice but to join the Dragon Riders. However, because she is more fragile, she's very afraid to join the Dragon Riders. And not only that, but most of these people have been training their whole life to become Dragon Riders, and she's only been at it for like 6 months. So she feels like there's no way that she's going to survive this Dragon Riding school, and that she has no choice. She's not going to make it, basically. But she surprises herself when she does cross that parapet, and she bonds these amazing dragons, and there's also a romance that blossoms between her and a arch rival, and it's so good. It's just so good, okay? And I just feel like everybody can enjoy this book. It's a beginner fantasy book. If you don't know if you're into fantasy, it's a good starting point. Very fast world building, very fast paced. These characters are very lovable and enjoyable. There's nothing wrong with this book. This book is pure perfection. Like, it's gold because this book is literally gold. This book should be platinum because this book is perfection. It is a platinum book. It's literally the best book that I've ever read in my whole life, and I still stand by that, even reading it again. And last but certainly not least, my other 5-star book is going to be Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Faeries by Heather Fawcett. I didn't know if I was going to enjoy this book as much as I did, because this is a cozy fantasy. I've only read one other cozy fantasy before, and that was Legends and Lattes, and I really did enjoy that book a lot. And I'm happy that I like this book, because like in Legends and Lattes, it's very low stakes. Like, nothing crazy goes on. I mean, I guess it does. A lot of things do happen in this book, but it's told in a very, like, cozy way. We follow our main character, Emily Wilde, We follow our main character, Emily Wilde, who is very much like a curmudgeon professor, and she studies fairies, and she basically goes to this little island to study these fairies called the Hidden Ones that not too many people know about. And her arch rival, Wendell Bamblebee, ends up following her to this island because he just misses her. And she's like, what are you doing here? He ends up just sleeping in her cabin, like just inviting himself in and being like, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to help you and this and this and that. And it was so cute. It was such an enjoyable read. I loved to read from a female curmudgeon because it's very rare when we have a female curmudgeon. Usually it's the male that's the grumpy character, but instead it's like the female that's a very grumpy character, and then we have a very like sunshine male character. It was just so cute, okay? It was just so cute. I loved the way that the fairies were depicted here, because the fairies are very much depicted as in like the actual fairies that we hear in actual legends. Because like I feel like ACOTAR and all these other books just made fairies and fae these like beautiful, amazing creatures that everybody wants to get smutty with. And in this story, we follow these fairies that want nothing to do with humans, okay? And I liked that. It was just very different and very cozy, and I loved it. Okay, that is all the books that I read in October and November. If you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell to be notified when I post. I post twice a week. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!